Alright. What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Nerdy Rich here, back on the Nerdy Rich channel. I know I've been gone for a while. I'm gonna have an edited video, gonna explain why I've been gone from the channel. So, today I'm gonna be talking about sub versus dub and why it's the most pointless argument in anime and manga spaces. So I will be also going over the history of it, why sub versus dub even become a whole big thing. As somebody who's been around the anime community for over 27 years, I have authority to speak about this. And I know a lot of people in the comments gonna talk about I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking out my ass and everything like that. But at the end of the day, I am going to speak my mind, and let's get into it. So why sub versus dub is even a thing? Well, the simple answer is sub versus dub is a thing because a lot of us anime fans grew up with watching anime on TV before we started to realize we could start watching it on streaming services and also, becoming One Piece characters to find anime. So a lot of us has always assumed that anime just was always cut, just had not great voice acting or so many other things. As somebody who grew up in more in the early 2000s and a little bit in the 90s, I could say for certain back then, we didn't have a lot of great dubs. We had some great dubs, but we didn't have a ton. Especially if you watch a lot of the shows on Cartoon, not Cartoon Network. No, some of Cartoon Network, mostly for kids and Kids WB. They had a lot of shows like your Yu-Gi-Oh, your Pokemon and stuff like that. A lot of these shows are one poor kids version of One Piece and other stuff, where a lot of these shows didn't have the greatest voice acting. A lot of them had like not great voice acting. A lot of the shows cut, so they cut out the original OST, the original Japanese soundtrack, so your opening, your ending, and background scores and stuff like that. They also cut out the show, so a lot of violence and stuff like that was cut out. So a lot of us were conditioned that that was always how English dub anime were. But if you go outside of watching it on TV, started watching it more online, especially with streaming services like Crunchyroll, Netflix, Amazon, High Dive, all these other sites. A lot of the English dub of nowadays, and even in like the early, I say about 2010s or so, they started to keep the animes as consistently to the Japanese version as possible, where it is so minute the details of how different the sub and dub were compared to how it used to be. Because back then in the early 2000s and the 90s, a lot of it was cut out unless you want like the DVDs and stuff like that. And that's when you started getting more of the uncut stuff. And of course, we had a lot of bootleg DVDs at the time. That's where I first got introduced to bootleg DVDs, because when I was younger, Dragon Ball GT was still on TV at the time. And I remember going to Jamaica Ave in New York, and I ended up buying one from one of the vendors at the time, and I remember watching it, and it was in English. It was basically the DVD copy of the original, because they bought the original DVD copy, but they wanted to bootleg it to sell it. But the software they were using wasn't advanced at the time, so it will cut out certain parts. And that's when I first learned about bootlegging, and also that a lot of these people would start taking anime from like different places. So some of it will get a trade from Japan and bring it here, and then start creating fan sub of it, and where they'll have the scene, and they'll write on it on a different software. Be like, okay, they'll write whatever dialogue they want and stuff like that. And that's how we got into the birth of some animes when it comes to America, because it actually started with it started more with that side. Of course, we had official subs. Obviously, we bought DVDs. They will have like the Japanese version and English version, and in the English version was the official, and the sub version was the official sub version. If you bought like the DVDs or the more of the DVDs at the time. If you had VHS, we only had whatever they gave to us. So a lot of people started to realize. Some of us started to realize that this is the best way to watch anime at the time, before the internet became a real big thing, is because we get to see the uncut version, we get the original Japanese soundtrack and opening and stuff like that. I remember buying the original Naruto DVDs because I was collecting them at the time, and I remember hearing the original soundtrack on the DVDs, because we didn't even get the original soundtrack to Naruto on TV until Toonami got a little bit of a later time slot on Cartoon Network, and that's when we finally started to hear the original Naruto songs, because we had from opening 2 all the way up until the last opening of Naruto before they pulled the original Naruto for TV, because it was losing rating because of the fillers and stuff like that. And plus, they probably maybe lost the right to show it at the time, because I remember eventually when it got Shippuden, that went to like Disney XD, and then people were watching it there, and then eventually it went back to Cartoon Network. But then now you can just literally watch it on whatever your favorite streaming site is, and you get the full uncut English version and the full uncut sub version. Now, that's basically how sub even became a thing. And another reason why sub also became a big thing is because a lot of people started to realize that if you watch the sub version, whether it's the fan sub of it or the official sub of it, you will always be ahead of whatever's coming on TV. So if you were watching Toonami at the time, whatever anime it was, you will be weeks to years behind. So let's say, for example, I'm watching Naruto, so we're up to Naruto versus Sasuke. So then that episode is about to premiere. The ending of that fight is getting ready to premiere that weekend. But everybody who watched the sub version, either the official or fan, more fan at the time, but they were watching the fan version of the sub, so they was already done with Naruto, the original Naruto. They was like, oh yeah, I'm finishing up the original Naruto, I'm watching the last couple of arcs, so the last bit of filler they're watching, and then they started going into the early parts of Shippuden, because it just started at the time. So they were watching the first like 2 arcs of Shippuden at the time, and that's where a lot of sub elitists started to become more of a big thing, because they were like, oh, see, this is why I love sub, because we're ahead of you guys by months. We get to see everything early, and it's more authentic, because it comes straight from Japan. We're getting the original English language, audio, and all this other stuff. But the funny part about that argument, what never made any sense, is that the DVD at the time were still behind, but it wasn't overly behind. Like, if you had a 24 episode anime, you would have all of it eventually, and then you could watch it, and then you're watching the uncut version anyway. And then once sites like Crunchyroll started to become a thing, because they started out as a fan site, and they were fans subbing like Naruto and all the other stuff, but then eventually the founders and stuff like that, and the co-founders and all the other stuff, decided, okay, instead of us getting us trouble for having these animes and stuff illegally, why don't we put the money in and go to the studios and ask them so we can do it legally? And that's where Crunchyroll eventually became the biggest anime site in all of the internet. It's because of the fact of they are able to get like a lot of these big companies, like they got Funimation, who's been in a dubbing game since like the 90s, because they were doing the original Dragon Ball. They did so many iconic series back then, and that's why that's why a lot of us fell in love with dubs, because of Funimation and so many of these other sites, these other dubbing studios. But then eventually, they got into that space, and then eventually they started to make promises. Hey, they'll have they'll have their sub version is gonna come out like an hour or 2 after it originally airs in Japan. And that's how we got simul subs. So then we started to get simul subs, and that was around for a very long time, until eventually a lot of these companies started to realize, why don't we try to do like simul dubs, where we'll have our dub teams that's already in house and everything, and that anime will come out and we'll immediately start having the dub. So that's why certain dubs nowadays only be like maybe an episode or 2 behind, versus being a whole series behind or multiple episodes behind. So let's say an anime just started. Let's say the sub's up to the first 12 episodes of the series, and the dub is literally just started with episode 1 or 2 or 3, and they're still behind. Now it's like they're only like, let's say, like, for example, when I was watching JJK Season 2, JJK Season 2 dub was, like, only a few episodes behind, versus me a ton of episodes. So I was watching the dub as everybody was wrapping up, as people was, like, really getting into the sub version, and by the time the last couple of episodes of the sub came out, the dub was, like, only, like, 2 episodes behind, and then eventually they came out with it. And that's the beauty of more modern dubs, is that not only are they a lot closer to the sub version, because it's literally the same thing, to the point where you can talk to somebody who watch a dub of a certain anime. Let's say you both watch the same anime. Let's say we're both watching JJK. So I watched the sub version. I finished the show in sub. The dub watcher just recently finished the English dub version. We're talking about it, and guess what? They know what you're talking about. You can be like, oh, I like Gojo. Oh, I know who Gojo is. That's this guy. Oh, I like Yuji. I know who that guy is. Oh, I like this plot that happened. Oh, I like that plot too. It's the exact same. It's not like back then in the early 2000s and 90s where everything was different because you had cut contents and stuff like that and everything in between. Yes, back then did we have bad dubs? Absolutely. We had a ton of bad dubs because again at the time they didn't know how to dub the animes a certain way yet because they were still getting used to it. And on top of it, the translation wasn't the greatest either because you only had like a handful of people at a company that did all the subs versus nowadays where we have the internet where translating the sub version to the dub version is a lot easier where now you have a whole department just strictly for that instead of a couple of guys in like one room doing it. You have a whole department of men and women working together to create a dub script for the team, and then they'll give it over to the voice actors and stuff like that. And now with the rise of AI, it's even more easier because of the fact that you can just put the show into an AI system and it will translate the whole thing in whatever language you want. So if you want it in English, you can translate it in English. You want it in Spanish, you can do it in that. French and all these other languages is a lot more easier to do. The only thing that I say it's a little different is how the voice isn't going to be. So some studios will try to keep the voice as similar to the sub as they possibly can. So they start hiring people that can sound as similar to the sub version as possible. But then you'll have others where you'll have people that has way different voices, but they have different cadences. My most famous one that I always give an example of is Sean Schemmel and Masako Nozawa, or the Japanese voice actress for Goku. They sound totally different. She has her set voice a little bit more raspier because it's a female trying to do a male voice, and then you have Sean Schemmel who is a male, and both of them are great for different reasoning. To the point where when I was watching Super and Sub, it didn't bother me. When I was younger, it used to bother me, but as I got older, it stopped bothering me because I understand why Nozawa is so important for the Dragon Ball franchise. It's because she's the original Goku. Without her, there would be no Goku because she made the show popular because of her voice and everything at the time, and she was handpicked by Akira Toriyama. But then you go to the dub side, Sean Schemmel is a legend when it comes to that role because not only did he do the role for many years from the original Dragon Ball, Kai, GT, and everything in between, he just how we all see Goku. Even now in theaters, you'll have theaters nowadays that will have the sub and dub of animes, and not like how it was when I was growing up. If you watch an anime movie in theaters, you're mainly watching the English dub of it because that's all they had. They was going to say the sub for the DVD version or the Blu-ray version. Now they're like, okay, let's put out both versions so you can watch the anime any way you want. That's why a lot of these anime films are doing gangbusters at the movies because you can watch it in any language. And guess what? You're not losing no contact with anything. Like I saw, like for example, I went to go see the Demon Slayer movie. I saw it twice. I saw it once in Japanese with one of my friends, and then I saw the English version with another friend of mine. And I loved it in both languages. I thought they did a phenomenal job across the board on both casts. And mind you, I watched all the series in English dub, but when I saw the movie, my friend really wanted to watch it in sub. I saw it, and I still had a fun time. I had an even better time with the dub because I was able to not only understand it better, I get to really lock into like certain things because when you're reading it and you're watching it, it's a little for me it's a little bit difficult, but at the same time it's not that big of a deal. That's why I personally think this argument is kind of pointless. It's because of the fact of it makes no difference nowadays. We're in the golden era of anime where dubs are a lot similar to the subs where there's no differences. They're a lot similar to the manga counterpart, the same way the subs are usually as close to the manga as possible. So there's no different, and the beauty of it, we're getting a lot of great new voice actors on the English side. We're getting a lot of young actors. We're getting a lot of actors of different races, cultures, backgrounds, genders, and all this other thing, which is a beautiful thing that we're having. That's why I don't get why people will sit there and disrespect a dub for no reason, when there's a lot of people that are very similar to us as anime fans that are doing it. And we're even getting people who done fan dubbing for years, they're starting to get their breaks into it. Like Kagi Film, for example. He was doing fan dubbing. He did everything in between when it comes to voice acting. Now he's doing official animes for like Crunchyroll and all these other big sites, and he's doing video games and all the other stuff. So that's why I praise English stuff, because they are finally giving us, the fans, a chance to be in these spaces and dub our anime. Because a lot of us fans know the anime better than the companies, because the companies only have but so much time to put out certain animes because of the fact that they have so many animes on their plates, versus us fans who watch and consume anime through manga, anime, video games, etc. So we know the work. And that's why I would never bash a sub watcher. I would never bash a dub watcher, because at the end of the day, you're both right for watching what you like. I would prefer more dub if it's available, but if it's not available, of course, then I'll watch the sub. It just depends on how I personally feel about it, and that's how it should be. You should never bash somebody just because they watch it dub. You don't need to be an elitist and be like, oh, I'm better than you because I watched the sub and this, that, and the third. Well, that don't matter anymore, because you're not ahead anymore. The reason why sub back then was more important than it is nowadays is because you were ahead of everybody. Now, with the way that modern dubbing is, thanks to streaming services and all this other stuff, is that you're not that far ahead. At worst, you might be an episode or two behind. The only time it felt like the old way, it was Dragon Ball Z Daima. It's because for some weird reason Crunchyroll decided to release the episodes one by one, but they did it so late. So by the time we get the final episode of Daima in English, the sub has been done now for a couple months. Versus it being like, okay, they have like 3 episodes ahead, we're already working on those 3 episodes, as those 3 episodes are a few weeks old. And then we start slowly catching up. So by the time the finale reaches, we're maybe like 1, 2, or 3 episodes behind, and then we're done. And like a month or 2 later, and then everybody gets to watch it. Everybody gets to watch it. That's what I think is a little ridiculous, but at the same time, a lot of anime dubbing studios and stuff like that realize it's better to keep it as close to the sub version as possible, both in terms of the script, how fast it comes out to us, and also trying to keep the voice as similar as possible, but also not be afraid to have small differences as long as it makes sense. And sometimes the small differences may work out better. Now again, I grew up with a lot of iconic animes at the time that had great dub. Full Metal Alchemist, Brotherhood in the original, Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Cowboy Bebop, and so many other iconic dub anime, Rurouni Kenshin, so many other great dub animes of just off the early 90s and 2000s. 2010s, there are way too many. Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, Bleach, well, the Thousand Blood War, but Bleach back then too, One Piece, and so many other iconic dubs that has been coming out in the last, like, decade, like 10 years or more. That's why I'm like, at this time, it doesn't make sense. Stop being a double elitist and stop being a sub elitist. Watch your anime however way you want, as long as we understand what you're talking about. So if you're talking about the dub version of it, you're talking about the sub version, and it matches 1-to-1 with each other, let's just talk about the anime. We all love anime. We all love manga. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on our love of anime and manga. We don't need to keep arguing about something that it doesn't even matter anymore. The sub versus dub argument is dead. We're going to bury it in 2020 and 2026. So if you want to bury this with me, please do that. And give me your thoughts and opinions on the video down below. And I know a lot of people are going to bash me for my take. But for somebody who's been, like I said, I've been around the anime community for over 27 years. I've seen the rise of sub animes from fan sites to fan dubs to official subs to now literally being it's come out around the same time as dub. I've seen bad dubs, I've seen phenomenal dubs, I've seen okay dubs, I've seen dubs that come out or virtually around the same size, the same time as the sub. So at the end of the day, It doesn't matter which one you pick. Just watch your anime however you want and have a fun time with it. And I'll get on the manga readers another day. But that's pretty much going to end the video. So I am going to be showing you guys an old sign out that I used to do way back in my YouTube career. I am bringing it back, but I got to quickly explain this before I end the video. This is not a gang sign. This is clearly not a gang sign. Do not be in my comments talking about you throwing up gang signs. It's not. So I'm going to explain it. This is going to be the only time I'm going to be explaining it. Now, there's one sign that I want the community that do sign language to let me know if this is an and sign or is it something else. If it's something else, please let me know by sending me a video or have some way of showing me, like, okay, this is how you do a proper and in our language. That would be perfectly fine. But to wrap it up, LOVE, that spells love. And now again, I'm going to make it more like this. This is going to be our version of and. Now, I don't know for sure if this is or isn't. That's why I want somebody that do sign language, so please let me know if this is the and. And then we're going to have the peace sign at the end. This is universal. Everybody knows what this is. So, let's do it all together. Love and peace. That's it. And I got that from Trigun, the original Trigun. Also, the ending of the new series is coming out. I can't wait to watch that. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe to the video, like the video, share this video with everybody. And I will catch you guys later. And yeah, 2026 is going to be our year. Let's go.